Welcome in, Slumpbusters. Training camp has started, which means your fantasy draft is just around the corner. And one of the tougher position groups to figure out is, of course, tight end. Now, we know there's an elite tier. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. Obviously, you're watching this video, so you know we're discussing on this video George Kittle versus Darren Waller. Drew Hagenbaugh, who is the victor in this matchup?
Well, I have George Kittle ranked one position higher than Darren Waller. And I know a lot of people are going to be like iffy and stuff like that about it. But I mean, it's just so close between these two guys. You really can't go wrong with either player because no matter what, you're going to get a big impact from both Darren Waller or George Kittle. Looking at their schedules and George Kittle still barring his injuries that he suffered over the years and Darren Waller getting the biggest workload out of any tight end in the NFL. For me, I do have Kittle rated higher, especially looking at the last 4 games he has. It's a little bit easier for him. Atlanta, Tennessee, Houston, the Rams. The Rams and one of the better defenses in the NFL compared to Atlanta, who are good against tight ends, but as a defensive whole, they struggle a lot. Tennessee and Houston, just not good defenses whatsoever. Compared to Darren Waller, he's got Cleveland in Cleveland in very, very cold December weather. As we all remember last year, he was very ineffective against the monsoon that he faced in Cleveland. Denver, again, a very good defense. Indianapolis, again, another very good defense. And the Chargers, again, a very, very good defense. So looking towards the playoffs, a lot of very good defenses against Darren Waller to where Kittle has a little bit more room to work with and stuff like that. But I gave Kittle just a little bit of the advantage, but obviously things can easily change within one snap of the football. So
yeah, I agree with you, and obviously we can't presume injuries, but then again, you look at George Kittle over just the last 2 years, he's missed 10 games. He missed half the games last year, and this is coming from a place of love as a Niners fan, obviously. But at the same time, if you're a fantasy owner and you have to consider that, you also have to consider the style of football that George Kittle plays. Yards after catch, tough, gritty, taking on defenders. And unfortunately, that has resulted in more than enough injuries over the course of his career. In fact, he still has a reoccurring shoulder injury that he's joked about on multiple occasions. And for the purposes of this, I'm actually going to shock some people. I'm going to go against your rankings. I like Darren Waller a little bit more, and just because that sheer amount of volume. And I do think that, yes, of course, we're just looking at these playoff schedules, and that does still keep it at a very close matchup because if you do get to the playoffs, you're not very optimistic about the idea of rolling Darren Waller against the Browns week 1 of your playoff schedule when you have to count on Derek Carr in a cold weather murky game. But on the other hand, you of course have to get to the fantasy playoffs to win in the fantasy playoffs. And that's where I just kind of like Darren Waller in that target volume, that sheer bulk a little bit more, because I feel like week to week consistency may vary with George over the years. The Niners are still a very run first offense. And obviously there is a little bit of inconsistencies that may come from the quarterback position for the 49ers. Right now with at least Las Vegas, you could say it's Derek Carr's job. No serious risk of losing that job. Whereas for the Niners, there are some rumblings, there are some talks between Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, what's going to happen there. I personally think that Jimmy's going to stick around, but if they do decide to go in Lance's direction, then that could completely shift around what the offense is. If it does become a little bit more run-centric, then that's also potential to take targets away from George Kittle, which I think comes into play here. So that's why, again, close margin, love the player George Kittle, but in terms of fantasy, I'm leaning Darren Waller just a little bit.
I mean, like we said, there's no right or wrong answer here. Either one you go with, you're going to get the best of the best. For me, I love Darren Waller. I mean, I have him in my dynasty league, I believe, and he's just beyond perfect and beyond amazing. Just getting that nice work share and that workload, just, not just going to him, because obviously Derek Carr has Henry Ruggs. He lost Nelson Aguilar to New England this offseason. He really doesn't have quality receivers as of right now because Henry Ruggs is more of a deep ball dependent threat, not so much as a route runner. I like Darren Waller's work share. I like Kittle's toughness and the way he just powers down people like a big running back or a fullback. So either way, I know I'm more towards Kittle and you're towards Waller, but like I said, either way, you can't go wrong. And knowing my rankings throughout the season, they're just going to keep flip-flopping each other.
I think another thing too, and this is something that we didn't discuss a lot pre-show, but I do notice this obviously more from a fan perspective and watching a lot of the games. George doesn't get enough targets in the red zone for my liking, especially as a fantasy owner. He does rely on between the 10s, between the 20s. But when it gets to the red zone, the Niners don't typically look his way a lot, which hopefully that changes. I'd like to see George have one of those double-digit touchdown years. But if we're talking about what can make or break your fantasy lineup, I definitely do think that red zone production is a big part of this equation as well. And I think that in that regard, Waller still has an advantage there. Not to mention, this is potentially an opportunity for him to get paid as one of the highest paid tight ends in the league as well. This is not exactly a contract year, but basically a contract year for Darren Waller.
Oh, no, I agree. And I think this is the year you're going to see Darren Waller go off even more than he did last year. And like you said, Kittle doesn't get that many red zone targets because obviously the likes of Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, you have Raheem Mostert in the backfield alongside now Trey Sermon, who's very deadly in the red zone. So for me, yeah, the 49ers have a lot of talent around Jimmy G or Trey Lance, whoever gets the playing time. But like the one thing I just like you said, the one thing I absolutely love about Darren Waller is just his not only his production but his workload that he gets, because he gets about 90% of the team's targets anyway. Looking at it, so. But for some reason, like in my brain, I just keep thinking Kittle's just gonna have a good, solid year. He's gonna have at least for you, praying for you. He has a no injury year, and he's healthy.
Pray for the rest of the roster for me, please.
Yeah,
just everyone on that roster.
Not $700 million of players going down and
exactly setting records, not the records you exactly want to set. Yeah, no, I mean, it's so close. It really is. And the reason you're drafting these guys at all is because you're trying to get that positional advantage. So if either one of these two guys was to not necessarily live up to their numbers, then you definitely feel that a lot more in your lineup. And I think that's one of the biggest risk/rewards about pursuing tight ends earlier in your draft. Okay, well, Niners faithful, don't come after me too much for ranking Darren Waller slightly above George Kittle. It's purely a fantasy-based decision. But let us know what you think in the comments. Are you a George Kittle believer? Are you a Darren Waller truther? Did you manage draft Travis Kelce and you don't have to worry about the rigmarole of this conversation? Let us know. Leave a like on this video and, of course, subscribe to the Slumpbuster on all major streaming platforms, especially our YouTube as we close in on 2,000 subscribers there. Check out our partner, cavemancoffeeco.com. Yes, cavemancoffeeco.com. Promo code SLUMP. Don't be a chump. Use promo code SLUMP. Juju Talk Sports, Drew Hagenbaugh. We'll see you next time.